को नाम बंधः कतमेशमागतः कतम प्रतिष्ठास्य कतम विमोक्षः को सावनात्मा परमः का आत्मा तयोर्विवेक कतमेतदुच्यता. What is bondage? How has it come? How does it continue to exist? How is one freed from it? What is this non-self? Who is the Supreme Self? How does one discern the difference between the two? Do tell me about this. These are the questions that a disciple puts to his guru in the Viveka Chudamani. This is a primer on Vedanta ascribed to Shankaracharya. The topic today is unpacking one's identity. And as we can see, it will be directly related to the quotation that we've just heard. Swami Vivekananda says, I close my eyes and I say, I. And what comes in my consciousness? The body. This is what we feel. This is what we are. But this is not a simple identity. It's much layered. We have class, we have race, we have economics, we have profession, we have education, we have religion, we have culture. We have the whole lot of identities. We have a nationality, we have everything. If you can see, the conflicts in Europe could be directly ascribed to this idea of identity. We also know from an old Greek mythological tale regarding identity. It's very telling, and that's a story of Narcissus. Narcissus was a beautiful looking youth. He separated from his friends while on a hunt. He was thirsty and he went to slake his thirst in the pool of water. And as he gazed at his own reflection, well, he knew he was very handsome. But at that moment, he, as it were, was so enamored with his reflection, he kept on gazing at it and over and over. And he was thirsty, but he couldn't take his mind away from his reflection. He kept on gazing at it. He just wanted to possess his own beauty. And he didn't want to share it, as we know, with Echo. And what he does is, he plunges his knife in his own breast and kills himself. Oh, this is a very famous story. And the blood that fell on those flowers, those white flowers which are called narcissus flowers. We also have this thing called narcissism. And most of us are narcissistic. How do you know? Well, you reinforce yourself, your ideas of identity every time you see yourself in a mirror or a reflecting substance. That's a narcissistic Okay. Narcissism ultimately is self-destructive. And society today is being dragged down by this narcissistic behavior. Whether it's mild, whether it's intense, this is narcissism. Now contrast this with another incident that happened in New York. Swami Vivekananda was there in a New York home, and that house had a large mirror from ceiling to floor. And Swami Vivekananda was curious. He was looking at that mirror, looking at the reflection, and with a kind of a puzzled look, and intermittently striding up and down the room, coming back again in front of the mirror and gazing at his reflection. His disciple Ellen Waldo was sitting there, and she was mulling in her mind, well, he is so full of personal vanity, she says. Now the bubble is going to burst. And as Swami Vivekananda was staring at that, his own reflection, he turns around to Ellen and says, Ellen, it's one of the strangest things. I don't remember what I look like when I turn away from the mirror. Amazing. We look at Swamiji and Swamiji is looking at himself, but he has no self-identity with the body and the mind. And that's why he can't even remember what he looks like. It's an amazing incident which many people miss out in Swamiji's life. But this is a tremendous statement. It shows how hollow all our studies and our philosophies are. Completely shallow. What is that which makes Swamiji not identify himself with these identities that we impose upon ourselves? We will see towards the end how this thing happens. Unpacking one's identity. I tell you, there's a lot to unpack. It's a big packet. Okay. So hold on, and as we go down step by step, we will see how we identify ourselves with what. Now, the first identity that we have is nothing but this idea of the body which is there in the brain. And this is constantly updated. There are two senses. We say we have five senses. Yes, external senses. There are two more senses. There is something called proprioception. It's called a proprioceptive sense. That from the limbs and from the joints, there's a constant sensations going to the brain to show the brain where in time and space the body is. The brain has to know where the body is. Apart from the external things, it has to know from the internal factors also how things are moving about. Then there is something called the interioception. That is required for the homeostatic balance in the body. The temperature and everything has to be told to the brain. So these are the two senses, internal senses that we have apart from the vestibular sense. We have something called the vestibular. It keeps us balanced. So this gives the brain the idea that this is where my body is and this is my body. And the body has a map of the brain. And the brain has a map of the body. And this has been shown in this phantom limb syndrome. If anyone has ever read or seen some of these V. Ramchandran's, you can see studies on phantom limbs, you can understand this. That there's a map of the body in the brain. That this is the first identity that we have. I am, like Swami Vivekananda, close your eyes and what do you feel? I, the body. This is the. And in Vedanta it's called the food sheath, Annamaya Kosha. The second identity is a person, just the body? No. Everything that you've thought or heard, you've studied, you've grown up with, it's actually, I won't elaborate on it, it's your personality. Personality. This is separate from your external identity. It's a dynamic play between nature and nurture. And this second identity is constantly growing. You may be a short person or a small person, but if you have a powerful personality, people will quake in front of you. It does not depend on your physical size. So, all your emotional, your intellectual, your willing, your memories, your everything is nothing but your personality. So that is the second. I could have gone on and on, but you know what it is. I don't need to elaborate on something which is well known. The third identity is, I won't elaborate again here. There is something called a hardwired sense in us, built in by evolution, that keeps us away from bad things or smelly things or malodorous things. Why? If you open the fridge and the first thing you take the food out, leftovers, see what do? You take a whiff. You look at it and take a whiff. This is an old evolutionary mechanism to save you from rotten, rancid, poisonous food. Yes, and finally developed, it goes into a kind of a moral sense of good and bad. You don't need commandments sent from above to tell you what's good and bad. You know. Evolutionarily, you are designed to know what is good and bad for you, for your own survival. This is the third identity. The fourth identity. The fourth identity is an ideal idea of your own self. What you want to be. And this is what impels all of us into striving, because we have an ideal of our own perfection. Now this has two components. One is the external and the other is the internal. The external is constantly reinforced and remodified according to the social standards. Suppose when I was young, or when you were young rather, it's better, you wanted $1 million. And as you grow up, you say, 1 million is nothing, I want 10 million. And that is constantly being modified. You want to look like somebody or something, but then some other person is noticed and you would like to be like that other person. So this idea of oneself, the ideal self, is what constitutes the external part of the fourth identity. The internal part is, it's a self-critical mechanism. It's more like that Freudian superego. It's not a superego, but it is something like whatever you have learned from your parents, and your teachers, from the society, these are moral standards. When you do something, immediately your mind says, that was not right. Something tells you, that's a conscience, the moral voice within you. You know, oh, I said or did something which is inappropriate. So that is your fourth identity with these two components. The fifth identity is, it is a grandiose image of oneself. This is actually the you can say the offspring of the fourth identity. The fourth identity, as long as it is healthy, it inspires us to work towards our goal. This grandiose identity is nothing but, well, most of our imaginations are about ourselves, and we keep on daydreaming. Daydreaming is actually a default mode of the brain. Your brain cannot stop humming. And you constantly have this kind of daydreaming. If you are working, the daydreams snap and you concentrate. And when the concentration, the work is over, your mind again keeps. Thousands of thoughts flow in and out of this way. So out of this, a grandiose image has been created. It is living in its own world, a world of imagination. If you are rich, that grandiose image is the richest person in the world. If you are small, that image is the tallest person in the world. It has superlative qualities. And all our ideas of superheroes are actually coming from those identities of ours, those hidden identities. It's only and you're in that world of, you can say, grandiose imaginations. It can do things because it's in its own world of even sick things. People who do sick things outside, it starts actually in that inner world. And we wonder, how did this person do? That person has been thinking about this over and over and over again. So the person comes and sprays innocent people with the bullets. Why? Why does it happen? That person has been doing that. It's a kind of attention grabbing mechanism outside. I am so great and nobody recognizes me. Why? I'll show the world. So this grandiose image, when it becomes sick, it festers. It does things which society or culture or religion does not allow us to do. That's that hidden identity. And we all know what that identity is of us. That is not shared with anyone else. So these are the 5 identities, but they are based on another very important aspect. There is something called the autobiographical self. Now, what is this autobiographical? All my life is in a kind of a sequence. It's a timeline. When you go to your social, you can say, media, you see your own timeline. You've gone there, you've gone here. So you have a timeline in the mind. It's your autobiography. I was like this, I was born here, I had these experiences. These are part of your memories. And if you lose some of those memories, your autobiography also goes along with it. It's tenuous. Though it's robust neurologically, it is still tenuous. So it relates the past with the present and also reflects on the future. So that's the autobiographical self. Take that as the sixth identity. This hardwired. However, any toxins or any viruses or drugs or alcohol can disrupt your autobiographical self. See how people behave when they're intoxicated or anything like that. They don't behave like normal people. Any illnesses, and then there is something called the gut microbiome. Here also it's called a second brain. Your gut is nothing but your second brain now. It also influences you. So the whole body is so finely tuned and connected, each with everything. It's an amazing mechanism that has been designed here. Now, we all know most of our life is lived internally. We live our life more in our mind. You see, all these identity businesses come when you have something called life. You don't have an identity when you're dead. A dead person's, do you think they have identity? No, it's just dead meat. There's something that gives identity, and that's life. And most of this life is internal, prana, and the mind, manas. So identities are here in our mind. And what is the mind? Mind is nothing but these various thoughts, thought waves rising and falling, rising and falling, rising and falling. These are nothing but constant perceptions or cognitions with memory. These are nothing but, everything is nothing but memory. Now, beneath that is what in Indian philosophy or Indian religions is called Samskaras. Everything that you do and say and think and will and believe and imagine leaves a mark on the mind. This is called the Samskaras. It has a vast store. Unbelievable. Nothing goes unrecorded. You may think that, oh yeah, nobody has seen me do that thing. No. Your own mind has recorded all those things. So these things are within oneself. So these identities layered one over the other actually dictates how we interact with the world. It's like a small peephole. We are looking at that through that peephole at the world. Or suppose I give an example. A pickpocket will only see purses and you can say wallets. A cobbler will see only shoes. A drunken person will see only liquor shops. We are oriented in this external world according to what we are. And slowly we create an identity based on this internal identity. So how do we get out of this? It is in the Indian system of, you can say, yoga. There are 4 principal yogas: the Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raj Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. So, instead of looking at yourself in your own mind, try to see you reflected in people's eyes, in people's faces. Let those be those external mirrors. Why did I say mirrors? Because, like I said, you have a reflecting medium like Narcissus or like Swami Vivekananda. If you ever have entered into a room full of mirrors. Have you ever done that? You find you've entered a room with mirrors on all four sides, and a infinite loop has been created of your own reflection. In our mind, our identities create a kind of infinite loop. I remember when I was young, I had gone to it was, the village fairs, and then we paid money to get into a kind of room of mirrors. And we went in, and I went in and I saw myself reflected 1,000,000 times, as it were, in all the mirrors. So the front mirror was reflecting the back image. Constant. There was a constant loop that's created. This is what actually happens in our own minds. To break that, try to see how you are reflected in other people. When you look into a mirror, you smile and the reflection smiles back at you. You frown, the reflection frowns back again at you. Try to see yourself now in people. If you smile at people, people will smile back. If you love people, people will love you. Try to be kind and compassionate and good and holy and pure, and you'll see yourself being reflected in people's faces. Have compassion for those who do not have anything, those who are homeless, those who are sick, those who are tired, those who are tyrannized over. And you'll see them reflecting you. Now, no longer are you a slave in your own mind. See yourself reflected in people's eyes and faces and in their lives. This is called Karma Yoga. If you see some person not happy, try to help that person. And that is the path of Karma Yoga. Bhakti Yoga. Instead of looking at that mirror in your own mind, Bhakti Yoga says that has to be replaced with the image of God. Constantly think of your chosen ideal. Take the name of God, worship God, pray, sing His glories, and that makes the image of God in your mind stable. It has to be done with love, gradually, slowly. Your image reflected in your own mind mirror is replaced with the image of God. This is Bhakti Yoga. Raj Yoga is the Raj Yogi will withdraw the senses, curb the mind. So that person will keep his mind in the present, will not let memories obstruct his consciousness or his concentration. So as the mind and senses are being curbed, the mind does not go to these two things. Go into those memory banks or imagine the future. The mind stays in the present. And through that tremendous insight brought about by this tremendous control, he sees that these images ought to be given up, and the yogi gives them up by transcending them. That is the yoga of meditation, jnana. And then we have the jnana yoga, the knowledge yoga. This is the hero. He doesn't or she doesn't want to waste time with all these nuanced representations of all these ideas, how they have to be replaced. That person simply walks in that room of mirrors and smashes those mirrors. All the old identities which were wrought by ignorance just simply crumble, fragment, and are destroyed. And the yogi, the Jnani yogi, stands there free from all self-identity or self-images of oneself. It needs tremendous guts and tremendous strength. Everybody thinks that, oh, Jnana Yoga is so easy. No, it's not easy. It's one of the toughest because it goes straight to your sense of identity and yanks it away and pulls it. Sri Ramakrishna, when he touched Swami Vivekananda during one of his visits, he saw his own identity with everything around whirling and getting merged into a void. All the doors and windows and floor and ceilings and everything, including his own individuality, getting merged in a void. And he cried, "What are you doing to me? I have my father at home." And then Sri Ramakrishna laughs and says, "Oh, okay, let it remain. Thak." And he brings him back. So here, to give up one's own identity seems easy. So it needs very heroic people to take up the practice of Jnana Yoga. So go and smash all those mirrors, have nothing to do with them, and come away free. So this is the path of Jnana Yoga. So these depends on your orientation, your spiritual orientations. I should clarify it. You can be a karma yogi or a bhakti yogi or a raj yogi or a jnana. But Swami Vivekananda is very clear. You must have a combination of all the 4 yogas because you have all the faculties present within you. One might or generally is predominant. So, but use all the 4 yogas to your advantage. It's only then when you can look into a mirror and see that it is nothing but the Supreme Self. Your own personal individuality has gone, the universality has come in, the universal person has come in. So the opening question of the disciple was, what is this unatman? What is this non-self? No self. It is this identities that we have, that we are burdened with, we are carrying. This is our personal dungeon. And what is the Supreme Self? This is the Supreme Self, which is like the sky, free, infinite. So how is the discernment between the two? One is bondage and the other is freedom. And Swami Vivekananda was identified with that Supreme Self. That is why he could not remember what he looked like when he turned away from the mirror. While Narcissus fell in love with that false images, like most of us. There's a spectrum of narcissistic disorders. We may not realize it. We might be somewhere on the spectrum. The narcissism is what is destroying lives and society. We are becoming manipulative. We have become exploitive. We have become cruel. We have become corrupt. All because of narcissism. And that has to go. And it can only go with spiritual strength. With the spiritual strength that you get from yoga. As the Upanishad says, two things present themselves to us. Shreyasya preyasya manushsameta dau samparityo vivinakti dira. Both the good, the limited, and the infinite, the perfection, Shreyas and Preyas, both of them they come to us. Now, when we discern what is permanently good, the perfection, that is to be selected. Preyo mando yogakshemam vrinite. So one who just, a conventional or provisional, you can say, choices that we do lead us only to bondage. When you take up the highest Shreyas, you end up in that supreme perfection. That is the goal. So where is the Supreme Self? The Supreme Self is all within all of us. He who lives in the mind, whose body is the mind, whom the mind does not know. He controls the mind from within. He is that internal ruler, your own immortal self. Eshata Atma Antaryami Amrita. This is one of those great, you can say, chapters in one of the Upanishads called the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, the Antaryami Brahmana, spoken by Yajnavalkya. He is that internal ruler, your own immortal self. So that supreme self is your own supreme immortal self. We have come away from it, and that's all the trouble. Get back, go home, as they say. Go home, go to where you have arrived from. That is perfection, that is liberation, and prayer helps to a great extent. It makes us unselfish. We are thinking only about ourselves. Pray for the whole world. Keep on praying for the whole world, especially for the people today who are suffering as refugees in their own country. They have to flee. Not only in Europe, but all over the place. We must be able to help the world with our prayers, silent prayers. Don't be callous. Don't be negligent. Don't think about just yourself. Oh, I'm safe, it's all right. No. You are never safe. Reach out to people in distress. Reach out with your prayers and help. That's the least you can do. Don't be caught up with only your genetic identity. This is me and I'm safe. Nothing. I'm far away from conflict zone. Nothing. So we are all connected. The Supreme Self is within all of us. And as we strive towards those goals, we may, by the grace of God, reach that point of perfection. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. As promised, we leave some time for questions. I would like you to follow a kind of a sequence. Please raise your hand or send in a reaction so we can take your questions one by one.
Helping the world, this idea is very universal, but how do we know what our little prayers are doing for the good of any people in the world, even though we send them?
Yeah, why do you have to get attached to the results? You pray, and this has been the experience of thousands and thousands of years of millions and millions of people who have said it works. And so you have to have that faith. If it helps you, it's going to help others. So I'm talking about it from the spiritual standpoint. You must be able to pray for the world. Like Swami Vivekananda says, When Buddha, he said, let all beings be happy, let all beings be peaceful, may all beings be blissful. He turned to the east, the west and north and south, above and below, and the whole world was full with his love. So prayer is a very powerful tool in everybody's hands. How do you know that it doesn't work? Well, it works. So that's the idea. Okay. Yeah.
When you say, like say for example, like there's a war zone, how do you make your prayer unselfish?
What do you mean? Pray for those people who are in distress. And like Swami here says, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. This is, instead of praying for, oh, let my stomach ache be all right, let my headache be all right, oh God, give me a kind of a nice job. Pray for the others who are in distress. So, there's always a scope of you praying for others. Why should prayer only be actually for you? In fact, they say, there's one school which says that 108, the japa, 100 goes to you and the 8 goes to the world. But there's another opinion that 100 goes to the world and 8 comes to you. A part of you is the external world. Like last Sunday, if you have you've gone to that talk, part of you is the environment outside. You are connected with the world. You cannot live in a vacuum. If you can live in a vacuum and people go mad in solitary confinement, you know why? Because your senses and your body and your mind is designed to interact with the world. So the solitary confinement is the worst form of punishment. Nobody can live in a vacuum. Last Sunday I spoke about all life has emerged from one root. It's like the Urdhva Mula. All life has emerged. Everything has the same DNA. You are connected with everybody. Why do you forget that other aspect of yourself? Why do you think only of yourself, self? That makes us selfish. Okay? There. So we have no more questions, and there we are. Good. It is, it has to start from somewhere. Try to think of the Supreme Self, that is very abstract, very abstract. Think of your Supreme Self as that of Shri Ramakrishna. Shri Ramakrishna is your Supreme Self. Okay? I'm not talking just about Shri Ramakrishna. Take any god or goddess or anything. The picture of your chosen deity. Consider that as a Supreme Self. And meditate, pray, worship that, and then slowly you will approach that. Because people want names and forms. It's very difficult to live without names and forms. You have to have names and forms. So that's the reason why God also comes down as an incarnation. So you can have a name and form. Replace that image which is in you with that image of God. And it is also said, we are made in the image of God. In Christianity, say we are made in the image of God. It's saying, but how come we have forgotten our real image? That's a problem with us. So replace that. Think about Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swami Vivekananda, or Christ, or Buddha, any deity that you love and adore and worship. Keep on doing that, and you will see definite changes within you. Okay. Now, if there are no further questions, we can tune out. Thank you all for joining us, And I like to see all of us. See, most of us are without any, you can say, they're faceless.
Pranam Maharaj.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pranam Maharaj.
Yay.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj.
Lisa, thank you for being here. Thank you. Jai Ma, Jai Ma.